Have you ever paused for a moment in the middle of your busy day, just for a second, to take a deep breath and quietly ask yourself a simple question? Am I enough? Not rich enough, not famous enough, but knowledgeable enough. Because there is a dangerous illusion that many of us unknowingly swallow whole the moment we graduate from high school or university. The illusion sounds something like this. Congratulations, you're done. You earned your degree. You threw your graduation cap into the air. And now the next step is simple. Get a job, make money, retire someday. We are taught that learning is a phase, a chapter in life with a clear beginning and a clear ending, like a box with a start date and a finish line. For many people, learning feels like taking bitter medicine, something unpleasant that must be done to cure ignorance. And once the cure works, you don't need the medicine anymore. But look around you. The world did not stop moving the day you received your diploma. In fact, it did the opposite. It accelerated at a terrifying speed. The things we learned 5 years ago, how social media algorithms work, marketing strategies, programming languages, may already be outdated today. Almost like artifacts in a technological museum. And if we hold tightly to the belief that learning only happens in classrooms with whiteboards and exams, then we are quietly walking toward a dangerous cliff, irrelevance. This video is not about getting straight A's. It's not about graduating with honors. This is a manifesto about something far more important. Why continuous learning is the most rational survival strategy in the modern world, and how, if practiced the right way, learning can even save your soul from emptiness. Your brain was designed to keep learning. Let's start by looking at something fascinating, your own brain. For centuries, humans believed the brain was a static organ. People thought that after childhood, the brain became fixed and unchangeable, like a completed sculpture. Old sayings reinforced this belief. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. But modern science, especially neuroscience, has completely destroyed this myth. Scientists discovered something extraordinary called neuroplasticity. Your brain is not a rigid ceramic vase. It is more like wet clay, or even better, a muscle. Every time you learn something new, a new word in another language, a guitar chord, a concept in physics, your brain physically changes. New neural pathways are created. Old pathways become stronger. Learning literally reshapes the structure of your brain. But there's another side to this process. When you stop learning, your brain becomes ruthlessly efficient. It begins removing neural connections that are no longer used. This process is called synaptic pruning. Think of it as the brain cleaning up unused roads. So when people feel mentally dull or slower as they age, it's often not just biological aging. Many times it's something simpler. They stopped challenging their minds. Learning is one of the most powerful forms of mental anti-aging. And there's more. When you learn something new, your brain releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter triggered by social media, video games, or sugary foods. But the dopamine from learning is deeper, more sustainable. The moment when you finally solve a difficult problem, or when you manage to speak your first full sentence in a new language, that feeling is a pure form of biological satisfaction. So the first reason to keep learning is very simple: to maintain the most valuable machine you own, your brain. The economy has changed forever. Now let's step outside our heads and look at the harsh reality of the modern world. We live in what experts call a VUCA world: volatility, uncertainty, complexity,
ambiguity. In the past, our grandparents could learn a single skill, repairing watches, basic accounting, a craft or trade, and that skill could support them for 40 years until retirement. Skills used to be stable currency. Today, the value of skills changes rapidly, sometimes overnight. A technical skill you're proud of today might be automated by artificial intelligence tomorrow. This is not fear-mongering, it's simply reality. In an age driven by AI, automation, and rapid technological change, one ability becomes more valuable than any specific knowledge: the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. The famous futurist Alvin Toffler once said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Think of yourself like an app on a smartphone. If you never update it, the app becomes slow, full of bugs. Eventually, it stops working with the newest operating system. Learning is the software update for human beings. It creates something called career resilience. When one industry door closes because of technology, lifelong learners already have the keys to open another. They become adaptable, flexible. Some even become T-shaped professionals, people with deep expertise in one field, but broad understanding across many others. This flexibility is one of the most valuable forms of insurance you can have, and the premium is simple:
A little time spent learning every day. Learning gives life meaning. But learning is not only about careers, it's also about something deeper: meaning. One of the greatest enemies of modern humans is not hunger or war, it is boredom and the quiet emptiness of routine. Wake up, work, go home, sleep, repeat, day after day, year after year. Without curiosity, life slowly turns gray. This is where learning becomes a powerful antidote. Learning adds color to the canvas of life. When you study art history, visiting a museum is no longer just looking at paintings. It becomes a conversation with the past. When you learn astronomy, the night sky is no longer just scattered dots of light. It becomes a story about the birth of the universe. Knowledge changes the resolution of the lens through which you see the world. The more you understand, the richer reality becomes. Psychologists describe a powerful mental state called flow, popularized by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Flow happens when you are so absorbed in an activity that you lose track of time. You forget yourself. You are fully present. This state often appears when we are working at the edge of our abilities, doing something challenging but achievable. And that is exactly what learning is. Humans are explorers by nature. If we cannot explore new continents like sailors of the past, we can explore oceans of knowledge. Curiosity is the fuel of a meaningful life. A person who stops being curious is, in some sense, already beginning to fade. Learning creates endless micro-adventures in everyday life. It keeps the story of your life moving forward. Learning connects people. Many people think learning is a lonely activity, a person sitting alone with books or a laptop. But in reality, learning is one of the strongest social bridges we have. Why do conflicts happen? Why does polarization grow? Often because of ignorance. We fear what we do not understand. But when you study sociology, anthropology, psychology, or even a foreign language, something interesting happens. You begin to understand why people behave the way they do, why cultures are different, why values vary. Knowledge creates understanding. Understanding creates empathy, and it is much harder to hate someone whose story you understand.
On a practical level, lifelong learners also become incredibly interesting people. Have you ever spoken with someone who seems able to talk about anything? They move effortlessly from economics to philosophy, to coffee culture, to technology trends. People like this have intellectual gravity. Others are naturally drawn to them. Broad knowledge expands your ability to connect with anyone, from a gardener to a CEO, because you have the vocabulary and ideas to understand their world. In a society that often pushes people into narrow boxes, the ability to connect ideas across disciplines becomes a powerful advantage. This is sometimes called connecting the dots. Steve Jobs famously credited a calligraphy class he took in college for inspiring the beautiful typography in the first Macintosh. At the time, the class seemed useless. Later, it became revolutionary. At this point, you might be thinking, this sounds great, but I'm busy, I'm tired, I don't have time. But the problem is rarely time. The problem is how we define learning. Learning does not always mean going back to university. You don't need a master's degree or a PhD to become a lifelong learner. Modern learning is built on something much simpler: micro-learning, small pieces, consistently. Reading 10 pages a day before bed, listening to an educational podcast during your commute, watching a lecture while cooking dinner. These small actions compound over time, just like compound interest in finance. If you become just 1% more knowledgeable every day, the growth becomes exponential. Knowledge stacks, ideas connect, understanding deepens. But there is one more important shift we must make. Stop being a passive consumer of information. Endless scrolling through social media feeds is not learning. Instead, become a curator of your own mind. Choose carefully what enters your brain. Challenge your beliefs. Explore ideas that disagree with you. And most importantly, don't be afraid to look foolish. The fear of appearing like a beginner is one of the greatest obstacles to learning. Ask questions, make mistakes, be a beginner today so you can become wise tomorrow. The quiet rebellion. In the end, learning is an act of resistance, a resistance against stagnation, against irrelevance, against the slow dullness that routine can bring to life. We don't learn only to pass exams or to earn promotions. Those are just pleasant side effects. We learn because growth is the essence of being human. A tree that stops growing slowly begins to die. The same is true for the human spirit. This world is far too vast, too beautiful, and too complex to walk through it with closed eyes and a closed mind. So don't let your curiosity fade under the weight of routine. Light that fire again. Pick up that dusty book. Enroll in that course you've been postponing. Or simply start asking why about the ordinary things around you. Because the best investment you will ever make is not in stocks, not in property, not in gold. It is the investment from the neck up. No economic crisis can steal it, no government can tax it, and no one can take it away from you except yourself. So, the real question is simple. What will you learn today?